5:47 in the morning, December 9th, 1944. Hurtgen Forest, Germany. Temperature 12 degrees below 0 Celsius. Private First Class Thaddeus Brennan pressed his eye against what shouldn't exist. What every military expert in Washington had declared impossible. What he'd built with his own bleeding hands from the shattered remains of enemy equipment. The scope mounted on his Springfield rifle wasn't military issue. It had been assembled in a frozen foxhole, using parts scavenged from destroyed German positions. A lens from a Zeiss artillery telescope, ocular elements from broken binoculars, tubes machined from spent brass casings, with nothing but a trench knife and desperate ingenuity. Through this improvised assembly, Tad could see what no other American rifleman in the Hurtgen Forest could see. German soldiers moving 600 yards distant, believing themselves safe from American fire. What they didn't know was that for the next 7 days, one American soldier with a homemade scope would systematically dismantle their entire defensive structure. By December 16th, Tad's count would reach 132 confirmed kills, not over months of combat, not across multiple campaigns, but in 7 consecutive days that would force the German High Command to issue specific warnings about a phantom American sniper who seemed to possess supernatural abilities. The scope that made this possible had been constructed from salvage components in less than 4 hours. Military optical experts examining it after the war would declare it mechanically unstable and theoretically incapable of maintaining 0. Yet Tad would fire it 317 times over 7 days, with accuracy that exceeded German military sniper school peacetime standards. But the numbers only tell part of the story. The real story begins 3 weeks earlier, when 47 American snipers had already died in the Hurtgen Forest, all killed the same way, all caught in the same German trap. And it begins with a 23-year-old farm boy from Oklahoma who was about to watch his best friend die in his arms. The Hurtgen Forest in late November 1944 wasn't just cold. It was the kind of cold that turned spit to ice before it hit the ground. Snow crunched under boots with every step. Fog rolled through pine trees in thick waves. The air smelled of wet earth, cordite, and something sweet and rotten that soldiers learned not to think about. Thaddeus Brennan was just another rifleman trying to stay alive. 23 years old, 6 feet tall but looking shorter under the weight of equipment and exhaustion. Brown hair that hadn't been properly cut in 2 months. Eyes that had been bright hazel back in Oklahoma, but now carried a permanent 1,000-yard stare. Tad had grown up during the Depression on a failing farm outside Stillwater. His father, a man who rarely spoke and never complained, had taught him 2 things: waste nothing, fix what breaks. When the plow broke and there was no money for repairs, his father showed him how to fabricate replacement parts from scrap metal. When the hunting rifle's firing pin snapped, they made a new one from a nail and a file. When there wasn't enough food, they made do. Young Tad had learned to see potential in broken things, to understand that sometimes the best tool wasn't the expensive one, it was the one you could build from what you had. He'd also learned to shoot, not for sport, for food. Every bullet had to count, because there weren't many bullets. His father would take him into the Oklahoma plains with their ancient rifle and 3 rounds. Bring back 3 rabbits or go hungry. By age 14, Tad could estimate range by eye within 20 yards, could calculate wind drift instinctively, could control his breathing and heartbeat until his hands never shook. The Army noticed these skills. When Tad was drafted in 1943, his marksmanship scores caught an instructor's attention. 6 weeks later, he was in sniper school. Given a Springfield M1903 rifle and a Unital 8-power scope that cost more than his father had made in a good year, Tad had stared at that scope with something close to reverence. Perfect lenses, precise adjustment mechanisms, built in a factory by skilled craftsmen with proper tools. It was the finest thing he'd ever touched, and in 3 months it would be destroyed. November 23rd, 1944, late afternoon. Visibility maybe 200 yards through the fog. Private Silas Parker was 20 years old. Skinny kid from Nebraska who talked too much when he was nervous, which was always. He'd been assigned as Tad's spotter 2 weeks earlier. They were in a bombed-out church tower near Wassenack. Silas had the binoculars. Tad had the rifle. Standard procedure. Except Silas never got to spot anything. The shot came from behind them, from a position they'd already cleared. The crack of the rifle, the wet impact, Silas jerking forward. Tad spun around, but Silas was already falling. The bullet had entered the back of his skull and exited through his face. He was dead before he hit the floor. Tad dove for cover, heart hammering. Scanned the area where the shot had originated. Saw nothing. The German sniper had vanished. But that wasn't the impossible part. The impossible part was the position. The shot had come from the north, from a building they'd observed for 20 minutes. There had been no one there, no movement, until there was. Tad stayed pinned in that tower for 40 minutes before reinforcements arrived, alone with Silas's body, trying to understand how a German sniper had appeared in a cleared position without being seen. The chaplain told him later that Silas probably didn't feel anything, that it was instant. Tad knew the chaplain was lying, had seen the expression frozen on what remained of Silas's face. But Silas's death was quick, clinical, over in a second. Tad didn't know it yet, but he was about to learn that there were worse ways to die. November 28, 1944, 3:17 in the afternoon. Tad was paired with a new spotter, Corporal Everett Cross, 24 years old, from a small town in Pennsylvania, married 6 months before shipping out to a girl named Rachel, who sent letters every week that Everett read until the paper wore thin. Everett was everything Silas hadn't been. Calm, competent, experienced, had survived when most hadn't, knew the terrain, knew the enemy. Within 3 days, Tad trusted him completely. They were in a foxhole near a destroyed farmhouse, watching German positions across an open field. Everett was eating a ration bar, making jokes about the food, talking about the farm he and Rachel were going to buy after the war, right next to wherever Tad settled. They'd be neighbors, normal conversation, the kind soldiers have when they're trying to pretend the war might actually end someday. That's when the world exploded. The German 150mm shell hit 20 feet from their foxhole. The blast picked Tad up and threw him 15 feet through the air. He landed hard, ribs cracking, breath gone, ears ringing. For maybe 10 seconds, Tad just lay there, stunned, trying to remember how to breathe. Then the ringing faded enough to hear screaming. Everett. Tad crawled back toward the foxhole. Everett was still in it, still alive, but not for long. The shrapnel had caught him in the side, below the ribs, angling up. Tad couldn't see the wound through Everett's uniform, but he could see the blood. Too much blood, and he could hear the sound Everett was making. Wet, gurgling, like breathing through water, punctured lung. Tad had heard that sound before, knew what it meant. He dropped into the foxhole beside Everett, hands already moving, ripping open the first aid kit, pulling out the compression bandage. Everett's eyes were open, focused, aware. That was worse somehow. If he'd been unconscious, maybe it would have been easier. But Everett was awake, looking at Tad with an expression that said he understood exactly what was happening. Tad pressed the bandage against the wound. Everett convulsed, coughed, blood sprayed from his mouth, dark red, frothy. Tad yelled for a medic, kept yelling, kept pressing down even though blood was coming through the bandage, coming through his fingers. Everett tried to say something, couldn't get air, just that wet, rattling sound. Tad leaned closer. "Don't talk. Medic's coming. You're going to be fine." A lie. They both knew it. Everett managed to grab Tad's wrist. Squeeze. His grip was still strong. He tried again. This time words came out. Barely a whisper. "Rachel, tell her. Tell her I tried." "You tell her yourself, when you get home." Another lie. Everett's grip tightened, then loosened, then tightened again, like he was trying to hold on to something slipping away. The medic arrived, took one look. Tad saw the expression on his face, saw him reaching for morphine instead of surgical tools. What happened next took a long time. Too long. Everett stayed conscious for most of it, eyes open, terrified, fighting for every breath that brought up more blood. Near the end, he stopped fighting. The fear left his eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like relief. His last breath came out as a rattle, a long, slow exhale that didn't stop until there was no air left. Then nothing. His eyes stayed open. Tad had to close them with his hand. The medic put a hand on Tad's shoulder. "He's gone, Brennan." But Tad stayed there, holding his friend, covered in his blood, until Lieutenant Caldwell physically pulled him out of the foxhole. They left Everett's body for graves registration. Tad went to the aid station, let them tape his ribs, refused morphine, needed to stay sharp. The doctor cleared him for light duty, said he should rest. Tad returned to his position after dark, found his rifle in the debris. The Springfield was fine, covered in dirt but mechanically sound. The inertial scope was not fine. The blast had thrown the rifle against a tree. The scope's housing was bent. The internal lenses were shattered. Fragments of glass fell out when Tad tilted it. He tried the adjustment turrets. Frozen, stripped, useless. For a long moment, Tad just stared at the destroyed scope. This beautiful precision instrument, worth hundreds of dollars, reduced to worthless metal and broken glass. Without it, the rifle was just a rifle, accurate to maybe 300 yards with iron sights, useless for long-range precision work. Tad carefully removed the scope from its mounting rings, set it aside, sat down with his back against a tree. Everett's blood was still on his hands, dried to a brown crust under his fingernails. For the first time since enlisting, Thaddeus Brennan cried. Not loud, soldiers didn't cry loud, but tears ran down his face, cutting clean lines through the dirt and cordite residue. He cried for Everett, for Silas, for all the boys dying in these woods who'd never buy farms or marry their sweethearts or go home. Then he stopped crying, wiped his face, picked up the destroyed scope. Tomorrow, he'd find out if the army had a replacement. He already suspected what the answer would be. November 29th, 1944. Morning. Staff Sergeant Wallace Kincaid ran the supply depot, 50 years old, career soldier. He looked at Tad's destroyed scope without sympathy. "No replacements available, Brennan." Tad had expected this, still felt it like a punch. "When will more arrive, Sergeant?" "Don't know. Could be a week. Could be a month. Scopes go to division level, then get distributed by priority. Your battalion's considered a holding force. Low priority." "Sergeant, I need that scope to do my job." "Then I guess you got a problem." Kincaid turned back to his inventory sheets. Conversation over. Tad stood there, hands clenched, thinking about Everett's last moments while this rear echelon clerk shuffled papers in a warm tent. "What am I supposed to do?" Kincaid didn't look up. "Want to keep sniping? Figure it out yourself. Otherwise, grab a Garand and join the infantry. Plenty of spots opening up. Boys keep dying." He said it casual, like discussing the weather. Tad felt something cold settle in his chest. "Figure it out myself." "That's what I said." "Build my own scope." Now Kincaid looked up, laughed. "Yeah, sure. Build a precision optical instrument in a foxhole. While you're at it, why don't you build a tank?" He turned to another soldier. "Next." Tad walked out, Kincaid's laughter following him. But those words kept repeating, not in Kincaid's mocking tone, in his father's voice, from Depression-era Oklahoma, from the farm where nothing worked and everything was broken and you fixed it anyway. Figure it out yourself, waste nothing, fix what breaks. That afternoon, Tad found Captain Maxwell Durant examining a damaged machine gun. Durant was 32, West Point graduate, knew more about weapons systems than any man Tad had ever met. Tad showed him the destroyed scope. Durant examined it carefully, turned it over in his hands, clicked his tongue. "Lenses are pulverized, mounting is bent beyond repair. Even if I could source replacement parts, optical alignment requires factory-grade precision equipment." He handed it back. "I'm sorry, Brennan, this scope is beyond field repair." "What if someone tried to build a new one, from salvaged parts?" Durant's expression shifted. Professional interest mixed with skepticism. "Build a scope? In the field?" "Yes, sir." "From what materials?" "Whatever's available." Durant was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. "Theoretically possible, but practically, no. Precision optics require controlled environments, clean rooms, proper tools. Even if you could source appropriate lenses, which you can't, the mounting system would be impossible. Rifle scopes must maintain 0 through repeated recoil. He looked at Tad with something like pity. Field assembly of precision optics is fantasy, Private. It can't be done. Yes, sir. Tad saluted, walked away. Behind him, Durant called out, Brennan, if you're serious about continuing sniper work, I'll put in another request for a replacement scope. Might get approved in a few weeks. Thank you, sir. But Tad wasn't waiting a few weeks. He was going hunting. November 29th, late afternoon. Over the next 18 hours, Thaddeus Brennan became a scavenger. The Hurtgen Forest was a graveyard of equipment, American, German, destroyed in combat and left where it fell. Darkness provided cover. He moved through destroyed positions like a ghost, careful, patient, a hunter's patience learned in Oklahoma. The German army equipped their forward observers with Zeiss telescopes, beautiful instruments designed for artillery spotting at ranges exceeding 2,000 yards. Built to survive artillery recoil, Tad found one in a destroyed observation post 300 yards behind German lines. Risky to retrieve. Had to wait until dark, crawl through snow, avoid patrols. The telescope's housing was shattered, but the primary lens was intact, protected by its reinforced mounting, 40 millimeters in diameter, crystal clear. He carefully extracted it, wrapped it in cloth, moved to the next position. A German machine gun nest, abandoned after American artillery had killed its crew. Hanging from a nail, a pair of Zeiss 8x30 binoculars. One barrel was shattered, but the other remained functional. Tad disassembled it with his trench knife, extracted the ocular lens group, 8-power magnification, exactly what he needed. The rest came easier. Brass casings from the firing range, 30-06. Spent shells by the hundreds. Tad collected 2 dozen. Copper wire from a destroyed radio, rubber gaskets from a gas mask. By midnight, he had everything he needed. He returned to his shelter, lit a candle, laid out his materials on a poncho. Then he started building. The work was meticulous, maddening. His fingers were already numb from cold. He used his knife as a makeshift lathe, a flat rock as an anvil, scoring brass casings at precise lengths, cutting through with patient pressure. First casing, too short, discarded. Second casing, crooked cut, discarded. Third casing, perfect. Hours passed. The candle burned down. He lit another. By 2 in the morning, he had 6 brass tubes of graduated sizes. Nested inside each other, they created a rigid assembly. He inserted the Zeiss objective lens into the forward tube, wrapped the base with cloth for snug fit, secured it with copper wire wound tight. The ocular lens assembly went into the rear tube. Same process. Then came the hardest part, alignment. For a scope to work, both lenses had to be perfectly coaxial. Even a fraction of a degree off would create unusable images. Tad had no alignment jigs, no laser tools, no measuring instruments. He had his eyes. He held the assembly up to the candle flame, looked through it, adjusted, looked again. The image swam, distorted, useless. He loosened the rear tube, rotated it microscopically, tightened, checked. Still wrong. Again, and again, and again. By the 20th attempt, his hands were shaking, not from cold, from exhaustion and frustration, and the creeping certainty that Durant was right. He thought about Everett, about the promise he'd made to himself. Never again. 21st attempt. The image cleared. Not perfect. There was slight distortion at the edges, but the center was sharp, usable. Tad's hands stopped shaking. He wrapped the joint between tubes with copper wire, creating both structural support and a crude adjustment mechanism. For the cross hands of his own hair, positioned them across the rear lens at 90-degree angles, fixed them with tiny drops of candle wax. The complete assembly measured 13 inches, weighed maybe 1.5 pounds. It was 4:47 in the morning. He'd been working for almost 5 hours. He mounted the scope to his Springfield, using the rings from his destroyed Unertel. The tubes were slightly different diameter. He shimmed the gap with lead foil hammered from rifle bullets. The scope settled into the rings, secure. Tad shouldered the rifle, looked through his creation. The world jumped into focus. Grainy, imperfect, but magnified. Clear enough to see details 600 yards distant. He allowed himself a small smile. Then he heard boots crunching snow outside. Captain Durant's voice. "Brennan, you in there?" Tad quickly covered the rifle. Too late. Durant was already ducking into the shelter. The captain's eyes went immediately to the workbench. The scattered brass casings, the wire, the German lenses, then to the rifle under the poncho. He reached down, pulled back the fabric, looked at Tad's creation for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "I told you this was impossible." "Yes, sir." Durant picked up the rifle, examined the scope closely. "This is mechanically unstable. The lenses will shift with the first shot. The mounting will fail." "Maybe, sir." "Definitely, Brennan." He handed the rifle back, but there was something in his expression. Not anger, something else. "When are you testing it?" Tad blinked. "Sir." "The scope. When are you testing it?" "Dawn, sir."
"As soon as I can see targets." Durant nodded slowly. "I want to watch."
Dawn came cold and clear, first light turning the snow-covered forest from black to grey to pale blue. Tad set up paper targets at measured distances, 100 yards, 300 yards, 500 yards, loaded his rifle, chambered around, settled into position. Through his improvised scope, the 100-yard target jumped into sharp focus. He controlled his breathing, steady, slow, squeezed the trigger. The Springfield kicked. The scope jarred against his eye. Downrange, the target showed a fresh hole. Dead center. Tad looked at Durant. The captain's expression was unreadable. "Check 0. Tad looked through the scope again. The lenses were still aligned, the image still clear. He shifted to the 300-yard target. Breath, squeeze, fire. Another perfect hit. The 500-yard target was barely visible to the naked eye. But through the scope, Tad could see it clearly. He calculated wind drift, bullet drop, held his aim point high and left. Fired. 3 seconds later, the bullet punched through paper 500 yards distant. Durant stood, walked downrange to examine the targets. When he returned, his expression had changed completely. "It works." "Yes, sir." Durant took the rifle again, looked through the scope himself, spent a full minute examining the image. When he handed it back, his voice was different, softer. "Brennan, what you've done here is impossible, which means I can't officially endorse it, can't authorize it, can't even acknowledge it exists." Tad's heart sank. "However, what you do with your personal equipment in your own time is your business. If your rifle happens to have an unauthorized modification, and if that modification happens to keep you alive..." He paused. "Well, I'm an ordnance officer, not a policeman." He met Tad's eyes. "Just make sure it works when it matters, Private. Because if this thing fails in combat, you're dead." "Understood, sir." Durant turned to leave, stopped, looked back. "That friend of yours, Corporal Cross, the one who died." "Yes, sir." "Make his death mean something." Then he was gone. Tad was alone with his rifle, his impossible scope, his promise to a dead friend. December 9th was 5 days away. December 9th, 1944, 5:30 in the morning. The temperature had dropped another 3 degrees overnight, 15 below 0 Celsius now. Thaddeus Brennan moved through pre-dawn darkness like a shadow, every step calculated, boot placement careful on frozen snow. The position he'd selected was a destroyed German bunker 300 yards northeast of Kleinhau. Concrete walls blown open by American artillery. Roof partially collapsed, but excellent concealment and clear fields of fire. Tad reached the position 90 minutes before first light, set up in complete darkness, arranged his shooting rest, laid out ammunition. 6 stripper clips, 48 rounds. Then he waited. Waiting was the hardest part. Hours of absolute stillness while cold seeped into bones and the mind wandered to dangerous places. Tad thought about Everett, always thought about Everett during the waiting. He pushed the memory down, focused on his breathing, on the present moment. First light came at 6:47, grey dawn filtering through fog. Visibility, maybe 400 yards. Better than usual. Tad unwrapped his scope, mounted it carefully to the Springfield, checked alignment. Perfect. The lenses had stayed true overnight despite temperature extremes. He settled into shooting position, eye to the scope. The world jumped into magnification, and there, through the German Zeiss lens he'd salvaged, Thaddeus Brennan could see what no other American rifleman in these woods could see. German soldiers, moving with casual confidence 600 yards distant, carrying supplies, smoking cigarettes, believing themselves safe.
They were wrong.
Tad watched them for 20 minutes, learning patterns, identifying officers, noting which positions received regular rotation. This wasn't random shooting. Every bullet had to count. Every kill had to maximize tactical disruption. At 7:13, he selected his first target, a German soldier approximately 600 yards distant, standing next to a distinctive bent pine tree. Lighting a cigarette, relaxed, rifle slung across his back, completely unaware. What happened next took 5 seconds in real time, but in Tad's mind, trained by years of hunting, those 5 seconds expanded, became a sequence of deliberate calculations performed with absolute precision. The calculations happened in the space between heartbeats. 600 yards, 24 inches of drop, 3-mile crosswind, 6 inches of drift. Exhale halfway, hold, stillness, crosshairs on target, high and left, squeeze. The rifle fired. The recoil drove the butt back into Tad's shoulder. Familiar. Controller. The scope jumped up and right. He rode it, kept the target area in view. Through the scope, still trained downrange, Tad watched the result. The bullet took 3/4 of a second to cover 600 yards. Time enough for the soldier to hear the distant crack, to start turning toward the noise. He never completed the turn. The bullet struck him in the upper left chest, exactly where Tad had aimed. The soldier's cigarette fell from his fingers. His knees buckled. He collapsed face forward into the snow, dead before he understood what had happened. Tad worked the Springfield's bolt, smooth, fast, ejected the spent casing, chambered a fresh round, stayed on scope, watching. The German soldiers around the fallen man reacted with confusion, looking around, trying to understand. One shouted, another dropped to cover. None of them looked in Tad's direction. 600 yards was beyond what they considered rifle range. They were searching the wrong area. Tad recorded in his notebook, "Shot 1, 600 yards, confirmed kill, scope holding." Then he did something that would characterize his entire campaign. He immediately displaced, gathered his equipment, moved 100 yards east to a secondary position. Different angle, different fields of fire. The Germans would eventually figure out the approximate direction of that first shot, would send patrols, maybe artillery, but Tad would be gone. Over the next 3 hours, Tad fired 11 more shots, 11 confirmed kills. Each followed the same deliberate process: range, wind, breathing, aim, fire. Each was followed by immediate displacement. Each confirmed that his salvaged optics were maintaining accuracy through repeated firing and position changes. By noon on December 9th, German forces in the Kleinau sector had become aware of an American sniper problem, but they assumed they were facing multiple shooters, standard sniper teams, maybe 3 or 4 pairs working in coordination. The idea that they were facing one man with a scope built from salvage in a foxhole was beyond their comprehension. At 12:47, Tad withdrew to American lines, reported to Lieutenant Jasper Caldwell, handed over his field notes. 12 confirmed kills, 12 shots fired. Caldwell looked at the numbers, looked at Tad, looked back at the numbers. 12 for 12, Brennan? Yes, sir. In one morning? Yes, sir. Caldwell examined Tad's rifle, saw the crude scope, the nested brass tubes, the copper wire wrapping. What the hell is this? Improvised scope, sir. Built it myself from salvaged parts. Caldwell looked through the scope, spent a long moment examining the image quality. When he lowered the rifle, his expression had changed. This works better than issue equipment. In low light, yes, sir. The larger objective lens gathers more light. Caldwell was quiet, thinking. Then he made a decision that would change everything. Can you make more of these? Tad blinked. Sir? More scopes, like this one. Can you build them for other snipers? Yes, sir, if I can source the parts. Source whatever you need. That's an order, Private. By tomorrow morning, I want every sniper in this platoon equipped with one of these. Sir, this is unauthorized modification, against regulations. Caldwell's expression hardened. Brennan, 47 American snipers have died in these woods in 3 weeks. You just went 12 for 12 in one morning with a scope you built from garbage. I don't give a damn about regulations. I care about keeping my men alive. He handed the rifle back. Make the scopes. I'll handle the paperwork. That night, Tad worked by candlelight in a supply tent. 3 other snipers watched him work, learning, taking notes. Sergeant Robert Kane, 30 years old, farm boy from Iowa. Corporal Vincent Hayes, 24.
City kid from Boston. Private First Class Marcus Webb, 19. Youngest sniper in the battalion.
Tad showed them how to identify suitable German optics, how to extract lenses without damage, how to machine brass casings into tubes, how to align the lenses by eye. By midnight, 3 more improvised scopes existed. By dawn, on December 10th, 3 more American snipers were hunting with salvaged German optics. The word spread like fire through dry tinder. By evening of December 10th, every sniper in the platoon knew about Brennan's scope. Half had seen it. A quarter had used it. 2 had already built their own. By December 12th, requests were coming in from neighboring units. By December 14th, 43 improvised scopes existed across the division, and the kill statistics were changing. In October, American snipers in the Hurtgen Forest had a kill ratio of 1 to 2. For every German sniper killed, 2 Americans died.
In the first 2 weeks of November, the ratio was holding steady, but in the last 2 weeks of November, after the scopes began spreading, the ratio shifted. 2 to 1, then 3 to 1. By December, it was 5 to 1. American snipers were winning again, and the Germans noticed. December 11th brought the heaviest snowfall Tad had yet encountered. Visibility dropped below 200 yards at times. Wind howling, temperature approaching 20 below. German forces assumed the weather would ground American sniper operations. Standard doctrine. Nobody could see in these conditions. Tad discovered that his salvaged optics possessed an unexpected advantage. The 40mm Zeiss lens had been designed for German artillery forward observers who needed to spot targets at dawn and dusk, in low light, in poor conditions, in heavy snowfall. While German soldiers struggled to see 200 yards with naked eyes, Tad could see 400 yards through his scope, clear, sharp. The visibility advantage was 4 to 1. He exploited it ruthlessly. Operating in snowfall that limited German observation, he moved closer than usual, 4 to 500 yards instead of 6. At these ranges, his visibility exceeded German capability by a massive margin. He could see them. They couldn't see him. The result was his most productive day yet. 31 confirmed kills from 36 shots fired. 86% accuracy. German forces suffered casualties without effective response. They couldn't see muzzle flashes through the snow, couldn't identify positions, couldn't return fire. The regimental reports from December 11th, captured weeks later, showed escalating panic. Sniper activity continues despite weather conditions. Casualties exceed acceptable levels, forward positions becoming untenable, soldiers refusing to expose themselves for basic position maintenance. Request immediate deployment of specialist counter-sniper teams from Division Reserve.
December 12th brought the specialists. German counter-sniper teams, not ordinary soldiers, graduates of dedicated sniper schools, equipped with Carabiner 98K rifles, topped with the finest optics Germany could produce. These men understood sniper tactics, had been hunting men for years. Tad faced his first peer competitors. He spotted the team at dawn, 700 yards distant, 2 men, shooter and spotter, setting up in the upper floor of a partially destroyed building. Professional setup, good position, excellent fields of fire. Tad watched them through his scope for 45 minutes, learning their patterns. The spotter made regular scans with binoculars, systematic, thorough. Every 12 to 15 minutes,
They rotated positions to prevent fatigue. The shooter remained focused on his scope, scanning American positions. Tad waited, patient, a hunter's patience. At 7:23, the spotter's scan pattern brought his binoculars away from Tad's sector. Looking south, the shooter was still focused forward. 15 seconds, maybe 20. That's how long Tad had. He took the shot, 720 yards, the longest shot he would attempt during the entire campaign. Beyond his normal operational range, the rifle fired. The bullet arced through morning air, took almost a full second to arrive, struck the German shooter in the upper chest. Through his scope, Tad saw the man jerk backward, fall, the expensive Zeiss scope tumbling from nerveless fingers. The spotter reacted immediately, dropped flat, professional response, beginning the tactical problem all counter-sniper teams face when engaged. Move and expose yourself. Stay and wait for follow-up shots. Tad didn't give him time to decide. 15 seconds after his first shot, he fired again. The spotter had begun low-crawling toward cover, moving slow, careful, not slow enough. The second bullet caught him between the shoulder blades, severed spine. He stopped moving. Tad worked his bolt, chambered a third round, waited, watching. Neither German moved again. Two professionals, trained, equipped, experienced, dead in 15 seconds, killed by a farm boy from Oklahoma, with a scope built from salvage. Tad displaced immediately, moved 300 yards north. The day produced 14 confirmed kills from 18 shots fired, 77% accuracy. The Germans had lost their counter-sniper team without even locating Tad's position. December 13th revealed the cumulative psychological effect of Tad's campaign. Forward observer reports, intercepted by American signals intelligence, painted a picture of unit cohesion collapse. Soldiers refusing direct orders to occupy forward positions. NCOs unable to maintain discipline without resorting to threats of summary execution. Officers requesting relief or reassignment. One intercepted radio transmission captured the situation perfectly. We cannot maintain current positions. Men will not expose themselves. Resupply impossible during daylight hours. Forward positions effectively abandoned. Request permission to withdraw to secondary defensive line. German command denied the withdrawal request. But denying withdrawal didn't solve the sniper problem. Through his scope, Tad observed the breakdown in real time. Soldiers moving between positions in panicked rushes. Officers attempting to enforce discipline while themselves showing visible fear. Entire sections abandoning posts without orders. He continued his methodical work. 27 confirmed kills from 33 shots, 81% accuracy. Each shot reinforced German fears, that nowhere was safe, that the American sniper could see everything, that exposure meant death. The Germans had given him a name by now, Der Geist, the ghost. Soldiers whispered it in foxholes, made signs against evil before entering open ground. Some refused to leave cover even under direct orders. December 14th brought a new German tactic. Unable to locate or eliminate the phantom sniper through conventional means, German artillery began systematic bombardment of suspected positions. Starting at 6 in the morning, 105mm and 150mm guns began shelling the ridgeline where Tad had operated. For 4 hours, they systematically worked over every position that offered decent fields of fire. Tad watched from a location he'd never used before. A crater on a reverse slope, limited exposure, excellent concealment. He'd selected it specifically because it looked unsuitable for sniper work. The Germans destroyed excellent positions Tad had used days earlier, but not the position he currently occupied. When the artillery shifted to a new sector, Tad resumed operations. The bombardment's aftermath created ideal conditions. German soldiers, believing the artillery had eliminated the sniper threat, moved more freely. Resupply operations resumed. Position rotations occurred on predictable schedules. Tad exploited their confidence. 29 confirmed kills from 35 shots, 82% accuracy. By day's end, German forces had returned to the paralyzed defensive posture. The intelligence reports from December 14th showed complete bafflement. Artillery bombardment of suspected sniper positions ineffective. Enemy sniper operations resume immediately following artillery preparation. Current assessment: enemy operates from multiple positions simultaneously or possesses supernatural awareness of our countermeasures. No rational tactical explanation for observed enemy capabilities. The phrase supernatural awareness appeared in formal German military intelligence reports. Professional soldiers, veterans of years of combat, had begun attributing American success to capabilities beyond normal human capacity. December 15th, night. Tad sat alone in his shelter, cleaning his rifle, his improvised scope. His hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from cold, from accumulated stress. 5 days of killing, 104 confirmed kills, 104 men who would never go home. He pulled Everett's photograph from his pocket, creased, worn, stained with dirt and blood, looked at his friend's smiling face, thought about Everett's final moments, about the promise he'd made, then thought about the German soldiers, someone's sons, someone's brothers, maybe fathers, maybe friends. He'd watched some of them through his scope, seen them share cigarettes, laugh, show photographs to each other, human moments that made them real. Then he'd killed them. The mathematics was simple. Every German soldier he killed was one who couldn't kill Americans. Every position he neutralized was one less threat. But the morality was complex. Tad set down the photograph, picked up his rifle, looked at the improvised scope. One more day. December 16th. Then he'd stop. 7 days was enough. 132 kills would be enough. Had to be enough. He wrapped the scope carefully, loaded fresh magazines, prepared his equipment. Outside, snow was falling again, temperature dropping. Somewhere across those frozen woods, German soldiers were preparing too, setting watches, checking weapons, writing letters home. Not knowing that tomorrow, some of them would die. Shot by a ghost they couldn't see, by a farm boy from Oklahoma who just wanted his friends to stop dying. Tad lay down to sleep. December 16th had begun, the final day. December 16th, 1944, 5:15 in the morning, the 7th day. Thaddeus Brennan moved through darkness toward his final position. Every step deliberate, every breath measured. The weight of 6 days of killing heavy on his shoulders. 104 confirmed kills. 104 men who would never see home. Today would add 28 more. The position he'd selected was a shell crater on a reverse slope. Poor fields of fire by conventional standards, limited exposure time, but excellent concealment. Tad settled into the frozen earth, arranged his equipment with the methodical precision of ritual. Rifle, ammunition. The improvised scope unwrapped carefully, almost reverently. 7 days of continuous use had taken their toll. The brass tubes showed wear at the joints. The copper wire was frayed in places. The lenses had carbon buildup, but it still worked, still held zero, still gathered light like no American-issue scope could match. First light came at 6:52, and through his salvaged German optics, Tad began his final day of hunting. The methodology hadn't changed. Patient observation, target selection based on tactical value. Officers first, then radio operators, then specialists. But something had changed inside Tad. The first 6 days, he'd operated with cold efficiency, mathematics of death, wind and distance and bullet drop. Today, he saw their faces, young faces, tired faces, scared faces. The first kill of December 16th came at 7:23. German soldier, 580 yards, carrying ammunition boxes. Tad's bullet caught him in the chest. Clean kill. Instant. Through the scope, Tad watched another soldier run to the fallen man, shake him, realize he was dead, look around with an expression of pure terror. The second soldier fled, abandoned his friend's body. Tad didn't shoot him, let him run, let him spread the fear. Der Geist was hunting again. The day progressed with terrible efficiency. Hours of observation punctuated by seconds of violence. By noon, 17 Germans were dead. By 3 p.m., 26. At 3:40 in the afternoon, Tad observed a German officer emerging from a command bunker. Distinctive leather coat, map case, moving with the confidence of command. Range, 630 yards. Wind, negligible. Light, good. Tad settled his improvised crosshairs on the officer's chest, controlled his breathing, waited between heartbeats, squeezed the trigger. The Springfield fired. The scope jumped, settled. Through the optics, Tad watched the officer collapse. The 132nd kill. But he didn't feel triumph, didn't feel satisfaction, just tired. So tired. He whispered to the frozen air, to a ghost only he could see. "Everett, your death meant something. I hope that's enough." Then Thaddeus Brennan gathered his equipment, carefully wrapped his impossible scope, erased all traces of his position. By 4 in the afternoon, he was back in American lines. The 7-day campaign was over. Lieutenant Jasper Caldwell examined Tad's field notes. 132 confirmed kills, 317 shots fired, 41% accuracy overall, numbers that matched or exceeded German sniper school standards, achieved with a scope built from garbage in a foxhole. Caldwell looked at Tad, really looked, saw the exhaustion, the haunted eyes, the hands that wouldn't quite stop trembling. "You all right, Brennan?" "Yes, sir." A lie. They both knew it. "You did exceptional work this week. The division commander wants to meet you." "I'd rather just sleep, sir." Caldwell nodded slowly, understanding. "Get some rest. We'll handle the paperwork." Tad saluted, walked away. Behind him, Caldwell studied the improvised scope. This crude assembly of salvaged parts that had killed 132 German soldiers in 7 days. He was already thinking about the report he'd have to write, already knowing that what Tad had accomplished would be difficult to explain to people who hadn't been here, already suspecting that someone, somewhere, would try to take credit for this innovation. January 1945. The weather had turned colder. The Hurtgen Forest campaign ground on. American forces advanced yard by bloody yard, and a team arrived from Aberdeen Proving Ground, Captain Eugene Whitmore, 2 ordnance specialists, an optical engineer, official evaluation team sent to assess field modifications to sniper equipment. They'd heard reports, improvised scopes, built from salvaged materials, showing remarkable effectiveness. Lieutenant Caldwell showed them Tad's scope, explained its construction, its performance, its impact. Whitmore examined it with professional interest, looked through the optics, tested the mounting, made notes in a leather-bound journal. "Remarkable field innovation. We'll need to take this back to Aberdeen for detailed analysis." "That's Private Brennan's personal equipment, sir. It's evidence of a significant tactical development. The Army needs to understand how this was accomplished, so we can replicate it." Caldwell called Tad to the command post, explained the situation. Tad looked at his scope. The thing he'd built with bleeding hands in a frozen foxhole, the weapon that had killed 132 men, the tool that had made Everett's death mean something. "You'll return it, sir?" Whitmore hesitated. "Eventually, after analysis." Another lie. Both of them knew it. But Tad was tired of fighting, tired of arguing, tired of everything. "Take it." He handed over the scope, watched them pack it carefully in a wooden case, wrap it in cloth, prepare it for shipment to Maryland. Watched them take the only thing he'd built that mattered. March 1945. The official report from Aberdeen Proving Ground arrived at division headquarters. 16 pages, technical diagrams, optical calculations, detailed analysis. The conclusion section read, "The United States Army Ordnance Department has identified a critical vulnerability in current sniper scope design. Limited light gathering capability in low visibility conditions reduces operational effectiveness. Through systematic evaluation, department engineers have developed a field-expedient solution utilizing salvaged optical components. German artillery observation lenses, when properly adapted, provide superior light transmission compared to standard issue equipment. Recommend immediate implementation of enhanced optical systems for designated marksman units. Detailed manufacturing specifications attached. Signed, Captain Eugene Whitmore, Aberdeen Proving Ground." The name Thaddeus Brennan appeared nowhere in the document. Neither did Lieutenant Caldwell's name. Neither did Captain Durant's name. The innovation that a farm boy had conceived in grief and built in a foxhole now belonged to the United States Army Ordnance Department. Official, sanitized, stolen. Caldwell showed Tad the report. Tad read it slowly, turned pages, reached the end, handed it back without expression. They took it. "Yes, sir." "Your name isn't mentioned once." "No, sir." Caldwell's jaw tightened. "This is theft, Brennan. They're claiming credit for your innovation." Tad was quiet for a long moment, looking at something Caldwell couldn't see, remembering Everett's final moments, blood and fear and a promise made to a dying friend. "I don't care about credit, sir. I care that Everett's death saved lives, that the scopes worked, that other snipers came home because of them." He met Caldwell's eyes. "How many American snipers are alive because of the scopes?" Caldwell had been tracking the statistics. 60, maybe 80. It's hard to quantify exactly, but your innovation probably saved 60 to 80 American snipers' lives. Tad nodded slowly. Then Everett's death meant something. That's enough. But it wasn't enough. Not for Caldwell. Not for the other men who'd seen what really happened. The injustice burned. But there was nothing they could do. The official report was official. The credit was stolen. The history was written. And Thaddeus Brennan went back to war. June 1946. Tad stepped off a train in Oklahoma, home after 3 years, still alive when so many weren't. The war in Europe had ended in May 1945. Tad had fought through the Rhine crossing, through the advance into Germany, had been wounded by artillery fire near Nuremberg in April, shrapnel in his shoulder, nothing serious, enough to send him home. His rifle had been left in Europe, standard procedure. The improvised scope had never been returned from Aberdeen, lost in bureaucratic limbo, or deliberately disappeared. He didn't care anymore, just wanted to forget. Sarah Mitchell was waiting at the station, the girl he'd left behind 3 years earlier, who'd written him letters every week, who'd waited. They married in August. Quiet ceremony, small-town church. Tad bought a farm outside Stillwater, worked the land like his father had taught him. Waste nothing, fix what breaks, make do. They had 4 children, 3 boys, 1 girl. Good kids who grew up not knowing their father had killed 132 men in 7 days. The improvised scope was gone, lost to history and theft. But the nightmares came anyway, always the same. Everett's final moments, eyes terrified, hand gripping Tad's wrist, voice wet and rattling. Tad would wake gasping, Sarah holding him, whispering comfort. He never told her the details, never explained, just held her and waited for dawn. The years passed, 1950, 1960, 1970. Tad farmed, raised his children, grew old quietly. 1965. Tad's youngest son found something in the back of a closet, a wooden case, military markings. "Dad, what's this?" Tad opened it. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, was a scope. Not his original improvised scope, but another one, nearly identical. Someone had sent it to him after the war. Anonymous. No note, just the scope. His son pulled it out, looked through it. "It's like a telescope. Can we use it?" Tad's hands trembled, memories flooding back, German faces in crosshairs, the kick of the rifle. "Put it back." "But Dad..." "Put it back. Now." His son, startled by the tone, obeyed. Tad took the case, wrapped it, put it in the back of the closet, deeper this time. Sarah found him later, sitting alone in the barn, staring at nothing. She didn't ask, just sat beside him, hand in his. Sometimes that was enough. 1987. Dr. Helena Vance was a military historian, researching sniper operations in World War II. Methodical, thorough. She was examining declassified documents at the National Archives when she found it, a reference in a signals intelligence report from December 1944. American sniper, designated Brennan, operating with field-modified optical equipment.
Estimated 60-plus enemy casualties. Equipment described as improvised from salvaged components. Brennan. Field modified. Improvised. Dr. Vance cross-referenced. Found more mentions. Field reports. After-action summaries. Found the Aberdeen report from March 1945, claiming credit for the innovation. No mention of anyone named Brennan. The pieces didn't match. She started making phone calls. Tracked down Lieutenant Caldwell, now 72, retired, living in Maryland. Mr. Caldwell, I'm researching scope modifications in World War II. I found references to a soldier named Brennan. Can you tell me about him? Silence on the line, long enough that Dr. Vance thought the call had dropped. Then, Tad Brennan saved my life, and the lives of 60 other American snipers. The Army stole his innovation and gave him nothing, not even a footnote. Can you tell me the story? Caldwell told her everything. Do you know where I can find Mr. Brennan? Last I heard he was farming in Oklahoma, outside Stillwater. Doctor. Vance drove to Oklahoma, found the farm, small, well-maintained, modest house, knocked on the door. An elderly man answered, late 60s, lean, weathered skin, eyes that had seen too much. Mr. Thaddeus Brennan? Who's asking? Dr. Helena Vance. I'm a military historian. I'd like to talk to you about a scope you built in 1944. Tad's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Brennan, I've reviewed the documents, interviewed witnesses. I know what you did, what you built, what the Army took from you. Ancient history doesn't matter now. It matters. You saved 60 to 80 American lives with your innovation. The Army claimed credit. Your name was erased from the record. That's theft. Tad was quiet for a long moment. You want to come in? They sat at his kitchen table. Sarah brought coffee, stayed to listen. Tad told the story, slowly, painfully, starting with Everett's death. The destroyed scope, the desperate improvisation, the 7 days of killing. I built it for Everett, because I couldn't let his death be meaningless, because I couldn't watch more friends die the same way. The Army report says Ordnance Department engineers developed the modification. They stole it, took my scope to Aberdeen, never returned it, wrote their report claiming credit. He shrugged. I didn't fight it, didn't care about medals, just wanted the boys to come home. Dr. Vance made notes, recording everything. Mr. Brennan, with your permission, I'd like to write an article. Tell the real story, give you credit for what you accomplished. Tad looked at Sarah. She nodded encouragement. Will it help anyone? It will correct the historical record. It will honor your friend Everett. It will show how real innovation happens in war, not in laboratories, in foxholes, by soldiers who refuse to watch friends die. Tad thought about Everett, about a promise made and kept.
All right, tell the story, but do it right. Don't make me a hero. I was just a farm boy who got desperate. The real heroes didn't come home. Dr. Vance's article was published in the Journal of Military History in 1988. The Stolen Scope, How a Farm Boy's Innovation Saved 60 American Lives and the Army Claimed Credit. It caused a small storm. Media picked it up. Local newspapers, then national. Veterans groups wrote letters, demanded recognition. The Army, embarrassed, issued a statement. After reviewing newly available historical evidence, the department acknowledges that Private First Class Thaddeus Brennan was the original innovator of the salvaged optics scope modification. His contribution to sniper doctrine was significant and is now formally recognized. Tad received a letter of commendation, 43 years late. He framed it, put it in a drawer, went back to farming. June 12, 2001. Thaddeus Brennan died peacefully in his sleep, 79 years old, surrounded by family. Sarah holding his hand. The funeral was small. Family, neighbors, friends from church, a few old men from the VFW. Sarah stood at the graveside, dry-eyed, strong. As the ceremony concluded, she noticed 7 elderly men standing apart, strangers. The oldest approached, maybe 80, walking with a cane. Mrs. Brennan, I'm sorry for your loss. Did you know my husband? Never met him, but he saved my life. The other 6 men gathered, each introduced themselves. I was a sniper in the 28th Division, used one of Brennan's scopes. German sniper had me pinned. The scope let me see him first. I lived. He didn't. I built my scope based on Brennan's design, used it in the bulge, career, taught my son about it, about real heroes who don't need medals. I read Dr. Vance's article, drove here from Michigan, wanted to pay respects. Your husband's innovation kept me alive through 2 wars. One by one they told their stories. 7 old men who owed their lives to a scope built in a foxhole by a desperate farm boy who just wanted his friends to stop dying. Sarah listened, tears finally coming, understanding for the first time what her Tad had really done, what he'd carried quietly for 56 years. He never talked about it, never wanted recognition. The best heroes never do, ma'am. They stayed for the burial. 7 old men standing at attention, saluting a grave, honoring a man they'd never met, who'd saved them with salvaged parts and desperate ingenuity, and a promise made to a dying friend. Fort Benning Infantry Museum, present day. In a climate-controlled display case sits an M1903 Springfield rifle. Wood stock worn smooth, metal showing honest wear. Mounted on top, a scope that changed doctrine. Nested brass tubes, 30-06 casings cut and machined. Copper wire binding. German Zeiss lenses somehow aligned perfectly. Human hair crosshairs barely visible. The label reads, Field Modified Sniper Scope, circa 1944 to 1945. Replica constructed by Sergeant Robert Kane, based on design by Private First Class Thaddeus Brennan. Original scope built from salvaged materials, December 1944, used to achieve 132 confirmed enemy kills in 7 days during Hurtgen Forest operations. Design estimated to have saved 60 to 80 American sniper lives through widespread adoption. Officially credited to U.S. Army Ordnance Department, 1945 to 1988. Credit restored to PFC Brennan, 1988, following historical research by Dr. Helena Vance. Original scope confiscated by Aberdeen Proving Ground, January 1945, never returned. This replica donated 1952 by Sergeant Kane to preserve Brennan's legacy. Correctly attributed 1988. Young soldiers stop to study it, read the label, look at the crude construction. An instructor leads a class of new snipers through. This scope was built in a foxhole with a knife and scrap metal. Experts said it was impossible, but it killed 132 enemy soldiers and saved 60 American lives. He pauses. Brennan didn't build it because he wanted glory. He built it because his friend died in his arms and he couldn't let it happen again. Sometimes, the best innovations don't come from laboratories. They come from soldiers who refuse to watch one more friend die. The students study the scope with new respect. What happened to Brennan? One asks. Farmed in Oklahoma, died in 2001, never asked for recognition, never complained about stolen credit, just wanted his friend's death to mean something. The instructor moves on. The class follows. The scope remains. Under glass, under light, a testament to desperate innovation, to promises kept, to the kind of heroism that doesn't seek recognition. In the reflection of the glass, if you look carefully, you can almost see them. A 23-year-old farm boy with bleeding hands and haunted eyes, and a ghost named Everett, whose death somehow saved 60 lives. They're there, in the brass and wire and salvaged German glass, in the weapon built by a soldier who just wanted his friends to come home. 132 confirmed kills, 7 days that changed sniper doctrine, 60 to 80 American lives saved, 43 years until justice. But for Thaddeus Brennan, the numbers never mattered. Only one number mattered, one friend, named Everett, who died believing his death was meaningless. Tad spent the rest of his life proving otherwise. The scope in the museum is the proof. Not of killing, not of innovation, not even of injustice corrected, but of a promise kept, that sometimes
the best thing you can build from broken pieces isn't a weapon, it's meaning. And for Thaddeus Brennan, that was always enough.